Hello, welcome to the Writing Gals. We are having a wonderful podcast tonight about kiss and tell. We're super excited. In fact, we're all a little bit giddy because this is our favorite topic. So we don't know if things are going to stay in control real well tonight, but we'll try at least give you some good information and not giggle too much. Okay, so first of all, let's touch base on what everybody's doing. So Amy, you want to tell us what you've got going on?
Sure. So I launched Marrying a Spy 2 days ago. Was it? At some point. I don't know. I launched it, so it's going out. I'm doing a big promo on the 31st for 99 cents and having all my newsletter sends go out that day. So it's kind of a slow launch right now. I'm kind of trying to figure out if I like the 30-day or the 3-month pre-order. That might have tanked this book. But like I say, it's always, good to try. And if it doesn't work out, I'll just do something different. And I actually just finished rule number 4, my Christmas novella. It's at my content editor right now. And it's going to be released. And I'm super excited because I got a BookBub new release on that. So this is my first ever BookBub. So I'm really excited for that. And then I'm working on Second Chance Mistletoe Kisses. It's just my adult Christmas novella. And then I have one more novella I have to write. And my publishing house just signed its first author. So I'm very excited to be working alongside of her to get her book published and launch her out into the sweet romance world. So that's what I'm doing.
So much cool stuff. And congratulations on all those things. All right, Judy, what have you got going on?
So I have just been busy writing as fast as I can because I have a book that I'm supposed to be getting to my editor by next Wednesday Thursday. I guess I have to finish it on Wednesday. So yeah, it's going to be a shorter one, but it's fun, and I am excited for tonight talking about kissing because I get to write a kissing scene tomorrow, so that will be great. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing, just trying to finish up my mistletoe mix-up. So
we're getting to read it in critique group, and it's super fun.
Thanks.
All right, Victory, what have you got?
I am finishing up my Christmas novella as well, and that's going to be in an anthology with Michelle's Christmas Story and a couple other authors, and so I'm really excited about it, and of course we'll be shouting about it as soon as it comes out, so watch it. If you're not a part of like Michelle's or my newsletters, join us so that we can tell you when that novella collection will be coming out.
Yeah, I'm super excited about my story being done. I'm a smidge ahead of Victory on that, but it's coming out, I think, November 16th, right? Is the release date for it? So it's coming right away, really soon. So I just finished that, and so I got to start writing my billionaire book, which is the 4th book in my 7 Billionaire series, and kind of like a Christmas bonus book. And I can't even tell you how excited I am about it. It's just one of those stories that I've kind of gone over the moon about and fallen in love with my characters. So I'm having a great time writing. It's always fun when the drafting stage has gotten, exciting and fun. So that's about what I've got going on in my life right now. It's all I can focus on is Christmas. And let's get to the good stuff, shall we, ladies? Did I forget anything? I know we're going to pick our subscriber winner at the end of our podcast. Don't let me forget. Okay, everybody, that's your job. Don't let Michelle forget to announce our winner. Okay, so let's get into kisses. We wanted to start off by taking you through some different stages of kisses that you might be writing in your story and let you get a feel for how to write all these different stages of people's relationships and their experience level. And so we're going to start off with Amy sharing one of her kisses by a newbie teenager. So take it away, Amy.
Sorry, my computer was doing something really weird and I couldn't get it to stop what it was doing. So now we're good. Phew. Okay, so this story, this kiss scene comes from my rule number 3, you can't kiss your best friend. And the reason I wanted to write this scene is because my female main character is convinced she's in love with this guy named Lachlan, and she makes it so she creates this matchmaker game, and she pairs herself with Lachlan because they're destined to fall in love, they're destined to be together. She has this all worked up in her mind that they're going to get, that they are soulmates. And so the reason I wanted to do this kiss was I wanted it to contrast very, very differently or a lot from the next kiss, which is actually with the best friend. And so I think, if you're going to talk about just a platonic kiss, what is that like? That's what happens in here. And she gets to do something really embarrassing, which is really fun to make your characters do. So, okay. She's on a date with Lachlan and they're dancing and he is telling her that he likes her. So Lachlan brushed his fingers across my cheek. I hadn't noticed until that moment that he'd stopped moving. I tensed, trying to figure out what he was doing. But when I glanced around, no one seemed alarmed that we weren't moving anymore. So I forced my mind to calm. You're beautiful, Olivia. You know that. He leaned closer, moving his hand under my hair to the nape of my neck. Wait, was he trying to kiss me? Panic rose up in my chest. What do I do? How do I kiss him back? Suddenly, all I wanted to do was sprint from the room. But before I could move, he leaned in and brushed his lips against mine. They were warm and wet. Had he licked his lips? But the more he moved his lips against mine, the taste of cherry lip balm entered my mouth. Had he worn it on purpose? His hands moved to the back of my neck and down to the small of my back. I could feel the pressure of his chest and legs as he drew closer to me. When his lips opened and his tongue entered my mouth, I panicked. I'd like to say I was a smooth kisser, but the next thing I did was humiliating. I bit Lachlan. Not hard, but enough to have him yelp and pull back. Red-hot embarrassment coursed through me as I watched, in slow motion, as he dabbed his tongue with his finger and then glanced down to make sure he wasn't bleeding.
We were just going crazy when Amy told us about this kiss. It's like, it's so cringeworthy, so awkward.
It's so cringeworthy. And my husband said the best part of it, because of course I was like, I have to read you this kiss scene that I just wrote. He's like, the best part of it is when he touches his tongue to make sure he's not bleeding. So for this one, I really wanted to emphasize that there was really just no emotion and it was just the mechanics. It was wet and he tasted like something and I could feel things, but there was no flutterings. There was no thinking about how this was the moment that she'd been waiting for. Even though it had to her been the moment she was waiting for, it just fell flat. And then I just added that lovely, embarrassing part where she bites him and then she just gets the heck out of there and is completely embarrassed for the rest of her life that she did that. So
she'll never forget it, will she?
No, but I wanted it to be so bad that when she kisses her best friend in the next scene, it's so good. And now she's like, holy crap. Like that's what a kiss is supposed to be.
Yeah. She is setting it up for the reader to contrast the two. Mm-hmm. So excellent. Okay, Judy, you're going to Victorine is going to take us into the world of the almost kiss.
Yes. All right. I love the almost kiss. It creates so much anticipation for the actual kiss that I adore doing this in books. And so the one I'm going to read is from my Falling for the Beast, which is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. At this point in the book, they've gotten to know each other and she knows that she likes him now. And right now in this scene, they are in a room. They're in a room, the library, but there's just one chair in there. So they're sharing the chair to both read their book. And she accidentally falls asleep in this chair with the
Victory.
Hero. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you just a second?
Yeah.
Hey, Judy, I'm the only video that's going to somebody on the YouTube channel. So I think maybe you clicked on me. Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
okay,
now it was on Victorine for some reason, so I clicked on you, and then you're gonna have to remind me every time. Yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
I love it.
I was like, you could it's like the big screen, and it's me like looking around, like itching my head.
That's wonderful.
I don't know why it's doing that. So I don't know.
Okay, go ahead, Victorine.
All right. I will read my almost kiss. Arabelle hadn't realized she drifted off to sleep until she became aware of the shift in sunlight and the embarrassing way she was hugging Thaddeus. She stirred, and he lifted his arm, allowing her to sit up. She gave him a shy smile. Sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep on you. It's okay. His voice was husky. Maybe he was sleepy too. Did I hurt your ribs? She splayed a hand on his chest. He looked down at her hand, then back up to her eyes. No. Good, because I was afraid. Her voice trailed off as she gazed into the deep green pools of his eyes. Her heart rate picked up. His hair was slightly tousled, his eyes soft. His high cheekbones and strong jawline gave his face a sculptured look, refined. He was handsome even with the scars. Without the scars, he'd be Hollywood material. Time seemed to slow as she gazed at him. He inched closer as if he couldn't help himself, as if gravity itself was pulling them together. Was he going to kiss her? She imagined what that would be like, and tingles erupted on her skin. She closed her eyes, instinctively waiting for his lips to touch hers. The doorbell rang, and Thaddeus jumped out of the chair. He ran his hand over his stubble. I'll go get that. So I wrote up some tips taking from this scene. And tip number 1 is put your characters physically close together. So with them in this room, and there's only one chair, I smashed them together in the chair together. Tip number 2, let their body language tell a story. So she splays her hand on his chest, and instead of just answering her, he pauses, he looks down at the hand for a moment, and then back to her eyes. So this is a very subtle thing to do, but you want your characters to show what they're thinking by what they're doing. And since we're not in Thaddeus' point of view, we have to show that just by what he's doing. Okay, tip number 3, allow us to feel what your point of view character is feeling. So during this scene, her heart rate picks up as she looks into his eyes, and we all feel that attraction she is feeling to him. So if you allow your character to experience it, then your reader will experience it right along with them. Tip number 4, the longer your character spends with the other person, the more attractive they start to become to them. So even though Thaddeus, he's my B character, and he's covered in scars all over his face and all over his body. And even though he has this, and it looks kind of ugly to other people, to her, he's starting to look beautiful. And she notices that he is Hollywood material underneath his scars. And tip number 5, let your character anticipate the kiss before it happens. So don't just have them come together and start kissing. Move them slowly towards each other and let that anticipation grow. And then in the end, after your almost kiss doesn't happen, usually it's one of 2 things. Either the characters pull back from each other or they get interrupted. So with mine, I had them get interrupted. But if you're going to have them pull back, just have that reinforcement of whatever it is keeping your 2 characters apart. Kind of wake them up and say, wait a minute, I can't kiss him for blah, blah, blah reason, whatever you've set up in your book. And so those are the tips I came up with for that.
And Victorine rocks the house as always. That was amazing. Okay. I hope my messenger things don't come through while I'm not muted. So we're communicating a little bit behind scenes, trying to figure out this screen switching thing. So if you hear my computer beeping, that's what it is. Just us trying to make this podcast better for you. So, okay, so now we've had the almost kiss, which we actually had a question, Victorine, about the almost kiss. So I thought it might be a good time to answer it. Rachel John wants to know, what are good non-cliche ways to interrupt the almost kiss?
I was thinking about that earlier today, because really, there's really only 2 things you can do, is have it be interrupted somehow. The phone ringing or the doorbell, or, something interrupts them, or they pull back. Because really, I can't think of any other way to end the almost kiss. It has to be either one of them or an outside force ending it. And so, you could be really creative. I think the phone or the doorbell, those are pretty cliche things that you see those all the time. But you could do a thunderclap that scares them, or, just anything that pulls them out of the moment for just 1 second and makes them laugh or ruins the moment somehow.
Yeah, Victorine's really good about doing the things that, the romantic comedy type interruptions. And I think anytime it is pertinent to the plot, anytime the interruption is pertinent to the plot, it helps it to not be cliche. So like if it's a phone ringing, but it's not anybody that matters to the story calling, then that's what makes it cliche. If it is the you know, the person's current boyfriend, you know, calling on the cell phone, that's a big time plot issue, because then there's the guilt and the shame about what they almost did while she's still in a relationship, so to speak. So that helps it to not be cliche if it's pertinent towards the conflict of the story.
Definitely.
Okay. So I guess it is now time for Judy's first kiss.
Yeah.
So time for the kissing queen to take over.
Okay, so this one is from my book, It Was Always You, and this is where the girl has never kissed a guy before, and she's in a fake relationship with her brother's best friend, who is also the guy that she's had a crush on for years, of course. And so anyway, they're faking their relationship, but they had set up these rules beforehand that, you know, it's just fake. There's no kissing because I'm just not, you know, I'm not comfortable with that or whatever. And then, but this other character in the book, who is kind of the reason why they're in the fake relationship, because the guy is just like trying to avoid this other girl. And so this other girl has been kind of watching them, like she's kind of skeptical that they're really together. And so she comes up to my girl character and is like, so why aren't you guys kissing? You know, like Noah, he kisses girls all the time. It's weird that he's not kissing you in front of anyone, you know. So then she goes to Noah and she's like, okay, I gotta tell you something. So this is what happens. And I wanted to show like the build up to the kiss also, because that part is like, you have to have that or the kiss just falls flat. So I'm showing the build up as well as the actual kiss. So I'm gonna share my screen just because I have some like notes to the side that might be helpful if you wanted to read along and kind of get an idea of what is happening in the kiss, just so you can break it down. And hopefully the screen sharing works well. Is that like fine? Okay. Okay, so here we go. This is from Lexi's point of view. I drew in a deep breath and stared into his dark eyes. Do you still want to continue this fake relationship thing? A worried crease formed on his brow. Why do you ask? Raven was asking me questions today, and I'm thinking she might be onto us. He leaned in closer. What kind of questions? I tried to remember, but the way he was looking at me made it hard for my brain to form coherent thoughts. I had to look at my hands, unable to return his intense gaze. She asked me why we never kiss in public. I blew out a long breath and adjusted my glasses. She said, you've never had a problem with PDA before, and so something must be off with you and with the way you feel about me. He scrubbed a hand over his face. She really is paying attention, isn't she? I nodded. So what are we going to do about it? I dared to look at him, anxious for his answer. Do you think we need to do something about it? His voice was more gravelly than usual, and my mind had a really, really hard time not thinking about how it sounded super sexy. I was not supposed to think that way about Noah anymore. I had gotten over my crush a long time ago. Noah was out of my league, a non-option unless we were just pretending. But I couldn't bring myself to say no, because deep down I still wanted Noah Taylor. I don't know, maybe? Couldn't he just make the decision for us so I didn't have to give away that I might still have feelings for him? But him letting me have a say was kind of sweet in its own way. Could it be possible that he might want something to happen too? I cleared my throat and tried to appear much more level-headed than I felt. I guess we have two options. If we want to keep this going, we'll have to ramp everything up. But if not, we'll need to stage a breakup soon. Please don't pick the second option. There was a gentleness in his eyes that I wasn't used to seeing. He seemed to be forming his thoughts carefully. I'm not ready to break up with you. I don't want this to stop yet. He didn't. Hope blossomed in my chest, and I sagged with relief. I shouldn't want to keep dating him like this because it wasn't real, but spending so much time with him was becoming addicting. I don't want this to stop either, I admitted, which leaves us only one other option, he said. And what's that? We might have to break those rules we set in the beginning if we want this to be believable. I'm probably going to have to start kissing you. My heart jolted to a stop. Kissing? I couldn't keep my voice from raising an octave. I knew that was why I'd started this conversation in the first place, but having him actually say it caused butterflies to flap uncontrollably in my stomach. I think that's what we'll need to convince Raven. He reached over and took my hand in his. There's just one problem with that. I had never kissed a guy. And if I was going to kiss Noah, something I had daydreamed about 1,000 times, I didn't want to mess it up, especially not with an audience. He squeezed my hand and studied my expression. What is it? He asked, like he was worried I wouldn't want to kiss him. Remember how I've never been on a real date before? He nodded slowly. Yeah? My stomach turned with nerves. This was so humiliating. Why did I have to keep having these kinds of vulnerable moments with Noah? His fingers were drawing circles on the back of my hand. I wish I could just focus on how incredible that felt instead of what I had to say to him. It's probably really obvious, but I've never kissed a guy before, and I don't want to look stupid in front of the other people. We've been letting them think that we're constantly making out. Can't look like I've never kissed you before. I said the words as fast as I could, hoping that the quicker I got them out, the less stupid they'd sound. He didn't say anything immediately. Maybe I'd stunned him into silence with a new level of social ineptness that had never been before reached by humankind. My heart pounded wildly in my chest. But then he finally spoke. I guess we could practice first. He peeked at me through his lashes. If you wanted. Practice? I searched his face for a hint that he was kidding, but he looked totally serious. He shrugged. Sure, you said you don't want it to look like we've never kissed before, so we can just practice first and the problem will be solved. Well, when he said it like that, it still sounded crazy. And then he stood and helped me up beside him. Oh, are you thinking we should practice right now? I asked. Yeah. Right here? I squeaked. Follow me. He took my hand and led me down the stairs to the gym. The bleachers were already rolled out for the assembly that we'd be having later this afternoon. He pulled me under the bleachers. Just watch your step, he said, as we went farther under. I watched his shoulders as I followed behind him, and then he suddenly stopped and I bumped right into his back. Sorry, I jumped back. Don't be. He turned and leaned one shoulder against the brick wall. I decided to follow suit and press my back against the wall. I needed it for stability anyway, since my legs were so wobbly. We just stood there staring at each other, his towering frame hovering inches from mine. When he didn't do anything, I spoke with a shaky voice. We should probably hurry up so we still have time for lunch. He nodded. Okay. Okay, I sighed, hoping he'd just go for it. He stepped in front of me, placing one hand on the wall near my head to brace himself, and as he leaned closer, I suddenly had an understanding of how powerful leaning really was. Maddie's favorite movie, While You Were Sleeping, totally nailed it. Noah was a giant compared to me, but I loved how it felt to feel so petite next to him. He was powerful and strong. He'd make an awesome protector if I ever needed one. Closer. You sure you want to do this? He was giving me one last chance to back out. My heart was beating out of control, and I was pretty sure I was on the verge of melting as I returned his hot stare. Yes, I whispered. I wanted this. I wanted him to kiss me, and it definitely wasn't because I cared about keeping up a fake relationship anymore. He ran a thumb over my cheek. You know Easton will kill me if he finds out about this. I swallowed. He probably would. We can break up if you don't want this. Do you think that's best? Do you? He shook his head and spoke in a husky voice. I don't want to think right now. And then Noah closed the distance between our lips. I gasped, caught off guard, but his hand cupped my neck, steadying me and pulling me closer as he coaxed my lips to move slowly with his. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never done this before, but for some reason my inexperience didn't seem to be an issue as Noah gently brushed his lips across mine once, twice, then again and again. He kissed me gently, like he actually cared and wanted to make my first kiss a good experience. I'd always assumed he was more of a gold for the gold, kiss without abandon kind of guy. But instead of attacking me with his lips and making me feel way out of my element, just trying to catch up, he kissed me as if I was fragile and he didn't want to break me. It made me feel unbelievably special. Noah knew what he was doing, and the slowness of the kiss made my stomach twist and shake with pleasure I'd never felt before. I could barely draw in a decent breath as his warm lips caused crackles of electricity that sparked mine to life in a brand new way. I'd had my lips for 16 years, but until this moment, I had no idea how many nerve endings they had or how sensitive to his touch they could be. And I never wanted this practice kiss to stop. It felt much too good to be so close to Noah with his lips capturing mine between his. Feeling a little braver, I let my hands trace their way up his arms to rest behind his neck. He was so tall that he was almost bent in half to kiss me. I raised myself up on my toes to help him out, and he reacted by pulling me closer and wrapping his arms around me. You sure you've never kissed before? He asked, breaking the lock his soft lips had on mine. Pretty sure this is my first time, I sighed, trying to catch my breath, but it was coming in short little bursts. Do you think everyone will buy this then? I asked. I really hope so, though I wouldn't mind practicing for a few minutes more. pretty sure you're a natural. His breathing was more uneven than usual. Could he possibly have enjoyed that kiss as much as I did? That's a relief. He rubbed his hands along my back, making it hard for me to think. So do you feel that was enough practice before we make our kissing debut? The thought of kissing in public scared the crap out of me, but maybe with Noah taking the lead, it wouldn't be so bad. His eyes dipped down to where I was nervously biting my bottom lip. Then his gaze met mine. Maybe just a few more minutes? I nodded, just to make sure. But before he could close the distance between us again, Ashlyn Brooks and Luke Davenport, of all people, appeared at the opening under the bleachers. Just let me die, please. Noah immediately straightened, standing to his full height. I pushed myself away from him, at the same time feeling my cheeks burn with embarrassment over getting caught by Noah's ex and her new boyfriend. So that was my kissing scene. I don't know. Do you think that the notes on the side were kind of enough explanation, or should we?
Yes, you little overachiever, you.
I love kissing scenes, so you know.
The complete breakdown. I just love the line where she was like, I've had my lips for 16 years. It's almost like, oh, this is what they're there for.
Yeah.
That was my favorite line. So good. So it's interesting because so much of the first kiss, especially with teenagers and first timers, is the anticipation of the tension. And Judy just kept that going and kept it going and kept it going until you're like, just kiss already. You know, and that's where you want your readers. You want your readers like kiss, 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 you know. So she did such a good job with that.
Yeah, that's my favorite part. I want my readers to be dying for it, and then I got to make them wait just a little bit longer. And then I give it to them.
I just saw myself on the feet, and I was like, okay, I just look like a crazy person. Okay. So that was so good. And now I get to read mine right after Judy's, which is just always so super awesome. Okay, so the kiss that I am reading is taking it a step further. So it's a first kiss, but it's between two adults who, you know, have a lot more experience kissing other people. So I don't have the cool diagram thing, so I'm just going to kind of stop occasionally and mention something before I go on. I thought I was going to totally ruin my scene, but I don't know. I'm just going to do it anyway. So I'm starting with a scene where my two protagonists, my love interests, are in a hotel room with the billionaire security guard. And there's been kind of a lot of buildup and flirting all day long. Hey, Rick, Blake said. Yeah, boss? Go take a walk. What? Why? I don't know. Check the perimeter or something, but go. Rick's eyes switched back and forth between the two of them. Then understanding dawned in his eyes, and his lips twisted into a smirk. He clicked off the television and left, only pausing to nod to Jill on his way out. But this was all too much for Jill. Maybe if Rick had never been here, if she'd never had a chance to think about it, she might have given in to her impulses. But as she shifted to get up, Blake wrapped his hand around her shoulder. Jill, don't freak out on me. What? I'm not freaking out. Yes, you are. You're tense, and your eyes are big, and you're biting your bottom lip. This isn't a good idea. I think it's a great idea. And if you'd relax, you might decide you want to kiss me too. Hearing him say those words made her heart pound harder than before. It's not that I don't want to. I'm just afraid of what comes next. Blake's expression was somber again, his eyes focused on her lips. See, there you go. I'm going to talk a few things that I set up here. The fact that they know that this is about a kiss invites that tension into it. And then he's looking at her lips now so that there's, that eye contact with what he's wanting, and that's building up more of the tension. That's not what I meant, but her words were sluggish and her thoughts scrambled as he bent towards her. There were reasons this was a bad idea, but she couldn't remember what they were. So this is important in a kiss scene if it's in the middle of a story instead of the end. So here we have to remind the reader that yes, they're kissing and they're taking the step forward, but there's still all these problems in the relationship why this isn't going to be a happy ever after kind of kiss. So that's why she's thinking about, there are still problems in the way. Giving up, she tilted her head and met him halfway, fitting her lips to his. The contact set off a reaction through her body, a jolting, radiant explosion. Blake moved his lips slightly, tasting more of her, then pulled back. Jill opened her eyes, trying to see if his reaction had been at all comparable to hers. The blaze in his eyes left her in no doubt. So there we have the testing the waters stage of the kiss, because this is a first kiss between the two of them. And it's like people are trying to determine, is this the person that, like, do I love her? What are my feelings? And a big part of that is your physical reaction to each other. And so your first kiss, your first touches tells a lot about your chemistry as a potential couple. And so the first part of almost any kiss you get needs to be kind of like a testing the waters to see what kind of chemistry reaction you have with each other. We definitely need to do that again. Blake's voice was deep and rough, but tender. His arms came around her, his fingers sliding around her side, pressing into her back. She relaxed and let him pull her against his chest, sinking into his embrace. Slowly, as if they had forever to test this new world, they kissed again. Jill's lips parted as she sought for more, and Blake deepened the kiss with an urgency that stole her breath. His fingers threaded through her hair, and his warm breath fanned across her cheek. His scent and heat enveloped her. She felt like she was melting, warming into a fluid, silken being. This was dangerous. It was impossible to pull away from the magic of his kiss. She had wanted this so badly, this taste of paradise, and now that she tasted it, how would she ever give it up? So I'm using a lot of sensory details, a lot of analogies and metaphors, a lot of words that show, melting and silken and fluid and all these kinds of vibrant words that kind of help to bring out the way you feel, because we all know what that sensation feels like. And so you need to really find words that are going to be vivid and bring it out a lot. And then at the end of this, I'm not going to read it, but then I have them interrupted by the cliche proverbial phone call. But it's something to do with the plot. But the important point is like, if you're writing clean romance, especially between two consenting adults in a hotel room by themselves, and you don't want it to go any further, then you need to have a way to break up that kiss, because otherwise it's just going to keep developing into more and more and more. And they'll go further and further and further. And so you need to break up the kiss, not only to keep things in the clean box that you've put your story in, but also because you still need to have places to go. You need to have more room for their physical relationship to grow throughout the book as their emotional relationship grows. And in clean, it's really tight. Your boundaries are really tight. And so you can't go to the farthest end of your boundaries on the first kiss. So I hope that was helpful and not completely choppy. So I think our next kiss is Victorine has. How would you describe this kiss that you're about to read, Victorine?
Well, this is the actual kiss between these two characters. So I read the almost kiss, and now this is a little bit later in the story, and we've been building up to this for quite a long time. And so this is their actual kiss. And this is the famous ballroom scene that everybody knows really in Beauty and the Beast. They've just danced to this song, and she's in this beautiful dress, and they're in this ballroom. And this is through the Beast's point of view, or Thaddeus's point of view. They didn't speak for the rest of the song, and as the notes faded, he stopped. His gaze fell to her lips. Was she wearing lipstick? They looked fuller and more inviting than he remembered them being. He let go of her hand. She stood there, staring into his eyes. He wondered what she was thinking. Was her throat constricting like his? Did she feel breathless too? He cupped his hand over her cheek, unable to resist touching her skin any longer. She closed her eyes, snuggling into his touch. Her skin felt like satin against his rough palm. He was powerless. He could not move away from her. She looked up at him. On impulse, he leaned over and brushed his lips against hers. It was so light, it almost wasn't a kiss, but the sensations that washed over him were overpowering. The smell of her and the feel of her lips were too much, and he kissed her again, this time with more determination. He grew dizzy from the kiss, as if the room were spinning. He pulled her closer, wanting to never let her go. All the feelings he'd been pushing aside, brushing off, and burying came rushing at him at once. How could he live without her? He no longer wished to breathe. He only wanted to stay there, wrapped up in her arms. Her fingers threaded through his hair, and he felt his control slipping. He groaned and pulled away, cutting off contact. She stared at him, a look on her face like she regretted what she'd done. Without her lips on his, he came to his senses. I'm sorry, I can't. Her gaze on him suddenly felt heavy, her eyes wide. He couldn't stand there anymore, so he turned and stalked out of the room. She didn't follow. So one thing I do when I'm kissing is I like to think of the kiss as a triangle. I try to think of what the character is thinking, feeling, and doing. So I like to describe physically what's going on and then insert some of these feelings, sensations. And if you want some ideas about feelings and sensations, The Emotion Thesaurus is the perfect book to get for that. That'll just give you some ideas of things physically that they are feeling while this is happening. And then, of course, the physically, what they're doing with their hands and with their lips and things like that. And so all three of those things come together for me as I'm writing the kiss scene. I like to let my characters dictate how the kiss is going to go. So if I have a really controlling type A, billionaire type character, then I want his kiss to be different than a shy bookworm girl who this may be her first kiss. So I like to kind of create this kiss depending on what my characters are like. And always at the end of the kiss, I do some kind of pullback, unless it's the very end of the story, because there's always something keeping my characters apart. If you don't do that pullback, then what happens is characters just start dating and having a fun time together, and it becomes kind of boring, and you lose all that tension for why they can't be together. So at the end of this kiss, my character, the reason he pulls back is because he actually is a beast. He becomes a beast, and he doesn't want to hurt her. And so he pulls away from her because he doesn't want to hurt this woman that he loves. And so you kind of get that heart-wrenching of him deciding that it's better if we're not together because I could turn into this beast and hurt her. So that's the pullback after the kiss.
Woohoo! Funny enough, after talking about a beast, we're going to go to the lady with the bite kisses. And I don't know. Sorry. That was so weird. Okay, so Amy's next
You're talking
kiss,
about me?
Yeah, because your kiss was the one with the bite at the
Oh, yeah. That's
So, like,
true.
are we writing paranormal romances here? Victor is in the fantasy realm here. Okay, so Amy is going for the steamy kiss, right? Like things get a little bit steamier here. So we're kind of exploring some of the further reaches of the steam in clean romance.
So there's a giant contrast between my first ever kiss scene in Forgetting the Billionaire and then after how many books and kiss scenes. I literally gone on YouTube and say, how to write a good kiss scene. So I'm really grateful that we have this podcast because I would have loved to have seen a podcast like this back when I was trying to figure out kiss scenes. And not that I'm saying I'm perfect by any means. So my latest book, Marrying a Spy, I kind of pushed some boundaries a little, not super bad, but I had a lot of fun writing their kiss scene. And the great thing about my two characters in this story is that they've known each other and they've kissed each other before. And so Noah left Sophia when they were in seniors in high school, and he hasn't been back since. It's been 10 years. And then he comes back and says, in order to get your father to kind of root your father out, you need to we need to fake a marriage. So they've actually had a kiss prior to this one, but it was a asked for kiss by their photographer. And so it was kind of intense and kind of like, whoa, okay, what was that? And now this is their like consenting kiss. But before I read that, I'm going to very quickly read you the scene right before it. They have an almost kiss, and then they stop. But I think it kind of gives you a good idea of how the next kiss plays out and why it plays out the way it does. So they're at a party, and they were dancing, and then they had an intimate moment, and then they had to push apart from each other. And now they're standing outside talking. He blew out his breath and turned to lean against the wall next to Sophia. Silence engulfed them as they stood there side by side, listening to the sounds of crickets and frogs. From the corner of his eye, he saw her wrap her arms around her chest. She was protecting herself. He knew that stance all too well. Good. She should protect herself. Her mother had been right. He was the wrong guy for her. Even though he knew he'd die to protect her, he couldn't protect her from his inadequacies, even if he'd give it all up to be with her. Noah, she whispered. He glanced over at her to see her peering at him. The earnest look in his eyes made his heart break. She was hurting. Geez, he was an idiot. Even when he was trying not to hurt her, he was hurting her. But she looked like she was waiting for him to tell her to continue. Yeah? I spent the entire time since you walked out on me 10 years ago trying to convince myself that I don't care about you, that I don't care about anyone. She paused as she closed her eyes. He could see her pain written across her face. There was nothing he wouldn't do to take that away. He moved toward her. He wanted to fix what he'd done, but she just shook her head. I kept everyone at a distance. If I didn't care about them, then they couldn't hurt me. But the one thing I was so scared of came true anyways. I was alone. She shivered, and before Noah could stop himself, he pushed off the building and slipped off his coat. He held it out to her, and Sophia hesitated before she turned and let him drape it over her shoulders. She looked so small, so vulnerable, wrapped in his coat. It was taking all of his strength not to reach out and pull her toward him. Sophia, She shook her head. I get it, Noah. You needed to find your way to make a name for yourself, and from what I can tell, you've done a good job at that. But he hadn't. He'd failed so many people. He swallowed and all the emotions, and the emotions in his throat almost choked him. How could he tell her that he was a joke? He hadn't protected Judy, and even though he deluded himself into thinking that he could protect Sophia, he knew he couldn't. He felt her hand on his cheek. Startled, he glanced up to see her staring at him. There was so much feeling in her gaze that it took his breath away. He could see that she cared about him. Her feelings were plain as day. Noah, she whispered as she leaned in closer to him, I can't pretend anymore. He wanted to back away from her, tell her that he didn't want her, that she was an idiot to get involved with him again. She deserved someone better than what he had to offer. Please, don't shut me out again. Her gaze felt heavy as it bore into his own. What was he supposed to do? How could he say no to her? She cared about him. That he was sure of. He could feel it. Her touch was soft. It was everything that he wanted. For a moment, he allowed himself to lean into it, to let the flicker of hope dance in his chest that they just might be able to make this work. He parted his lips and allowed his heart to speak. No more censoring. He wanted to say everything that he was feeling. Heck, he wanted to pull her toward him and show her everything he felt. But could he? It went against everything he wanted for Sophia. I can't. The words tasted bitter on his tongue. As soon as they were out and floating in the air, he wanted to take them back, to unspeak them, especially when he saw her face fall. He'd hurt her. Again. What was wrong with him? The back door opened and they both jumped. A waiter emerged, and when he saw them, he jumped as well. I'm sorry, he said, raising his hands to expose an unlit cigarette in one hand. No moved to speak, but Sophia beat him to it. It's okay. I was just leaving. So in this scene, these are two broken people that were very, very hurt by this situation that happened 10 years ago. And in this scene, this is the moment where Sophia is trying to open up to Noah and say, I don't care what happened in the past. I want to do this with you. And Noah pulls back. And so then they kind of like, okay, we're going to go home. So they get in the car and they drive back to her house. And Noah has this push and pull going on because he's like, I really care for her, but I can't, but I really want to, but I can't. And so my next scene is the moment where Noah decides, I'm going to do it. And so then in this scene, she takes off his shirt, and I'm going to tell you why. He was damaged when he was in Afghanistan. He was working in the military, and there was an explosion, and he got trapped in a car. And so he has burns on his chest, or he has scars on his chest that she saw in the second chapter of this book. And she wanted to know about it. And it was, interesting to her, and he hasn't told her. So the reason she takes off his shirt, and I'll just read it and you can figure out why, but there is a purpose behind it. And I also just wanted to take something off. So, he always has coat off, and now we want to take his shirt off. Okay. So, sorry. Okay, so when he glanced over at her, she could see the uncertainty in his gaze. No, wait, here we go. Sophia nodded as she watched him walk past her. Why wasn't he acting on the feelings that were written all over his face? Was she just crazy to think that he cared about her as much as she was desperately trying not to care for him? Unable to stand there trying to digest his feelings, she made her way over to her room where she dressed in her nightgown. After she threw on a robe, she opened the door to find him standing on the other side. His hand was outstretched and resting on the door frame. Her breath caught in her throat as she took in his stance. He was studying the ground. "Noah?" she asked. Her breath came out soft and hesitant. He straightened and brought his gaze up to meet hers. In that moment, she could feel everything he was trying so hard not to say. She closed the gap, wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him toward her. When her lips found his, she crushed her body against his. He wrapped his arms around her waist and pulled her up. He moved to press her against the wall. Her lips moved against his. She wanted to needed to know what he was thinking. Even though it had been so long, did he still care for her like she did for him? He pulled back for a moment and she groaned in protest. He studied her. She held his gaze, hoping he could read her intentions, that he could see how she felt, how she had always felt. His hand moved from her back up to her cheek where he ran his thumb over her skin. She responded by moving her hands across his chest. She could feel his scars under his shirt. They were a part of his past that she wanted to know about. She wanted him to trust her enough to tell her the story. When her fingers got to the bottom of his shirt, she fingered the hem. As if he sensed what she was about to do, he leaned forward and pressed his lips against hers. This time, they were softer, more inviting. He was giving her permission. She raised his shirt. He lifted his arms and helped her pull it off. She dropped her gaze to his bare chest and brought her fingers up to trace every scar that spread across his skin. He watched her as she explored. Sophia's mind swirled as she thought of the pain he must have experienced. There was this whole part of his life that she knew nothing about, and it hurt her so much that her chest squeezed. There was a canyon of distance between them. She was tired of that distance. She was ready to close the gap and start again. So ready. Her fingers made their way up to his shoulders and around his neck. When she turned her attention back to him, she caught his gaze again. He held it for a moment before he leaned into her and met her lips. The warmth that exploded through her took her breath away. She held onto him as if he were a life raft. For so long, she tried to pretend that she was strong, that nothing her father or Noah would do could affect her, but that wasn't the truth. And standing here kissing Noah, she knew that she wanted this, all of it. She wanted it more than breathing. Kissing Noah was healing the cracks in her heart. She wanted to trust him, fully, completely. Noah left her lips and to kiss a trail across her cheeks. He nibbled on her ear before making his way down her neck. She tipped her head back and allowed a moan to escape her lips. Before she could stop herself, the words, "I've always loved you," tumbled from her lips. Noah stopped, pulling back to study her. Unsure of what he was going to do, she met his gaze. Fear built up in her chest as she waited for his response. Seconds ticked by as he remained quiet. So this is probably the spiciest scene I've ever written of my books. And but I wanted to kind of play around with it a little. I have a couple of people who are like, it gets a little steamy in the kisses, but doesn't go farther than that. And so when she says that she loves him, that's basically when he's like, wait a minute. Oh no, what have I done? I got to pull back because I'm this broken person and she can't love me, even though he for a moment gave in to the things that he wanted the most, which was to trust her and to kiss her. So
I think you successfully made it more about the emotions and about the trust than a physical thing with taking off the shirt. It was more about his past and her connection with him than it was, I'm getting way into this kiss and I want to take all your clothes off. So I don't think I see it as a major steamy thing. I see it more as two people who are connecting emotionally and starting to trust each other more. And that is a key thing in romance, whether you're writing whatever spectrum of steam level you're writing, you need that trust and that connection in the romance.
Yeah, and I wanted to show the almost kiss because that was the moment where Sophia had opened up to Noah, and because her opening up was just, I'm going to admit these things to you that I had a hard time admitting to you for the first half of the book when you came back into my life, and so I'm going to step closer to you and I'm going to tell you I trust you. And then here was the moment where Noah said, I'm going to trust you with something from my past. But I should have put spoiler alert. So if you haven't read this book, maybe it'll make you want to go read it now. So
it's kind of like when I did a class on story endings at the Midwest conference. I was like, okay, this class is all spoilers. So lot of spoilers tonight too.
I had a lot of fun writing, and so I think it shows that you can. We kind of got in a little trouble last week when we said that there wasn't emotion in steamy scenes or in steamy books, and that's not true at all. We know that in order to make a good steamy scene, you need all of that emotional buildup to the actual moment. But what we meant more is, and you even during the steamy scene, you have a lot of emotion, but with Sweet, all you have is the kiss and all the emotion is surrounding it. So we want a hypersensitive, that emotional part to give that satisfying moment. You know what I mean? Not that I'm saying you don't get that with steamy, but like in the kiss scene.
I don't know that we actually said that last time. I'm going to have to go back and watch that podcast because I don't think any of us would have said that, but something we said could be understood that way, maybe. So yeah, we don't mean that there's no emotion in steamy writing. We just are talking specifically if you're trying to keep it clean and wholesome, then you need to focus on the emotion is more than the physical.
Well, I think the comment said that that we'd said that the more steamy ones had more physical, and that we still needed physical in clean. Also, I think that's kind of the way that they did, and I guess you do.
I don't know. We'll have to go back and read the comment and watch the podcast.
Yeah. So the physical just stops at the kissing, and maybe grazing your hand across their back, but don't go any touching their skies. But
so our first question from Facebook is kind of along these lines. So it's a good time to talk about it. She was actually talking about Amy's shirt hem thing that she mentioned in last week's podcast, which is the one she just read tonight. So let's see here. When it comes to clean and wholesome, how much can be involved before it's too much? For instance, details involving tongues, teeth, nibbling, or is it best to just go with they kissed with feeling? No, it's not better to just go they kissed. That's such a cop-out to just say they kissed. Like, we all hate that. Don't do that. I mean, unless it's like a throwaway kiss in the part of the book where it doesn't matter and they've already been kissing a whole lot. Occasionally you get away with something like that, but don't do that. So what is too much? And I guess I'll just kind of start it out like clean and wholesome is Victorine. Should we use Victorine's definition? Like the no pink parts kind of thing. And then Victorine's gonna like kill me. But like but it's don't involve body parts that have either hypersexualized or used within those interactions. Just don't refer to them specifically because readers are going to have a real issue with that if they like things to be squeaky clean. And there's a big spectrum of people coming into the clean and wholesome category as readers. There are some that like steamy and they read both. There are people who have religious reasons for wanting their books to be clean and wholesome, and so they are very, very strict and they don't like things to go very far at all. And so you have this kind of merging of different reasons why people find their way to this category. And so you will always find readers who are okay with things going a little bit further, because they read up, they read steamier. But if you go into those waters, you're going to end up alienating a huge part of the clean and wholesome audience. And so that's where we all have to kind of figure out is which part of the audience are we trying to reach, and are we okay if we alienate a huge segment of that audience? Because there are a lot that don't want to see tongues. They don't want to see anything under shirts or underpants. They don't. I just said underpants. SpongeBob. Okay. So anyways, and then, there's just this other thing where, when the kissing turns into petting or groping, then I think that's pushing it way into steam too. Even if clothes aren't coming off, if petting and groping starts being described graphically, as far as, play by play, then that becomes too steamy, in my opinion, for the majority of the market. So sometimes you can mention it in a broad or, with metaphors or with like vague wording so that the reader can fill in the blank and put their own meaning in it. And maybe the reader is okay with them getting a little bit more handsy. And so they kind of fill in their imagination that way. And if they're not okay with that, then you're not putting anything into that the reader is going to be uncomfortable with. Does that make sense? Anybody else want to chime in?
Well, I was just going to reiterate what you were saying is it's a spectrum for a reason, because you have everything from where you have just they kissed and that's it, and all the way to the steam level. So you have to figure out as a writer where you want to be on that spectrum. And what I would say is, if you are writing market and you want to sell like all the clean and wholesome books that are selling really well, then read them and see what's in there and study what the bestsellers are doing and mimic that, because that's really where you're going to be able to find the market that's hot right now.
Okay. We may bring up more pieces of this as we go on, because it's kind of, something that we could just talk all night about, but we can't because we're running out of time. So how do you write clean kissing scenes book after book and not have them be fresh and not cliche? Is there a kissing scene thesaurus somewhere? I haven't heard of one. I know there are books that exist about kissing, but I haven't necessarily found any of them to be super helpful.
Yeah, I think the most helpful thing you can do is just read a lot of kissing scenes. And so like what I will do my first kissing scenes, there are all these great ideas and I used them all. And so to keep them more fresh is I'll just read a bunch of other kissing scenes, or I'll watch, kissing scenes on YouTube and just kind of get, different things that could happen in the kiss. And then of course your characters will always make it a little different because they have different personalities from the characters in your other books. But yeah, that's kind of just what I do. I'll get ideas from other kissing scenes and try to make them my own and spice it up a bit.
Sometimes what I do is I write maybe a little steamier and then bring it back. Or I just write it and then I go back to it and say, how can I add into it to make it better? To make, you want to do touch, taste, smell, sight. How are you including all the senses? And then I think if you have a couple, maybe like one or two almost kisses, or when you start at the spectrum down here and the epitome is up here, and as long as that line is good and it's going up all the time, when you hit the kiss scene, you should be just like, for me, I am right there. I am ready for those two to kiss. And so if you're feeling like, oh, this is forced, you might not have enough tension at the start of your story and going through to make that kiss feel good. If you're not excited about your kiss, or you're feeling kind of bored with it, then your reader will probably feel bored with it. So go back and be like, how can I amp up the emotion? How can I amp up the feeling so that when the kiss comes, it's a nice resolution to some built up tension that you've been trying to feed along the story.
Yeah. One thing I'll do too is I will, if I feel like my kiss scenes are all the same, I will maybe shake up things by changing the setting. Like I have one kiss scene where they're at the top of a Ferris wheel. That's a different setting than I had ever done before. So you can change things up that way. You can also change things up with just by your characters themselves. Like a character who loves flying an airplane is going to maybe describe a kiss somehow in an aviation term or flying term, and that's going to be a different kiss than another character who is obsessed with something else. So think of your characters and what specifically they are thinking about as this kiss is happening, and that'll make it different.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring into the conversation, was that every character is going to bring so much into that kiss that it should be fresh. If you are in your character's point of view, deep enough, then that kiss will be different than any kiss you've ever written, because that character is that person. And so, but you also need to keep in mind that we need to have a whole podcast on theme because it's my favorite thing. But if you have a theme woven through your book, then this is a good place to kind of drop little reminders about that theme or little tidbits that your character is growing in a way, right? And that can be accomplished by and not just like what the character is good at, like Victory mentioned aviation, but if they have certain things that are touchstones for them, or certain things that, like, if they really like the taste of hazelnut chocolate or something like that, they're going to describe the things that they like, and you have to kind of get in the head of your characters a lot to make it fresh and not cliche. Okay, let me see if I can get my phone to unlock, and then we're going to go to the next question. How can you talk about the foreplay of kissing? The lingering glances, the brush of bare skin, the first touch, the hug or embrace. Go through each and every one of these steps before the actual kiss. So, foreplay for a kiss, guys. I mentioned in my kiss, I talked about him looking at her lips. There's actually a 12-point intimacy progression thing. Have you guys seen that? Amy has.
I was trying to find it today and I couldn't. So
yeah, and it talks about the progression of the physical relationship, and I think that is part of the foreplay leading up to a kiss. And if you write steamy, it just keeps building up from that point on. But
yeah.
Well, I think we kind of talked about it, like last week, where we were like, your hands stay in this general area, and then the back, like you don't. So once you start touching front parts and underpants parts, both literally and figuratively, then that's way intimate. That's a little farther than we want to go. So, like, I think it's like your hands. Oh God, I wish I had. I remember like going to a Storymakers class where they talked about this. The points.
Well, I know there's
intimacy.
first like the eye-to-eye contact, and then they will like touch hands, hold hands, cuddle, almost kiss, and kiss, and move on from there.
I think they said that kiss was lower, like on the not intimate scale, as like touching a part of the body that you wouldn't think. I think maybe it was like your back or your neck. Like it was more intimate to touch someone's neck than it was to kiss them. Let me see if I can find the one I got when I was at Storymakers. Hold on.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to post it somewhere. But I was gonna say, if you compare like Judy's kiss, there was a lot of what you might call foreplay in that one. Just a lot of build up and leading in and things that, touching and testing the waters and, that sort of thing. There's a lot of that in hers. And there was less focus on it with mine between two adults who are, ready to jump to that point a lot quicker. So it has a lot to do with what kind of story you're writing and where you are, how much you include in that. We're running a little low on time, so we're going to move on. If Amy finds what she's looking for, she can talk about it, or we might just post it somewhere. So what are your thoughts on having the whole book lead up to a kiss? I assume they mean one kiss at the end versus having more than one kiss between the couple in the book.
I think it depends on how long the book is. Like if it's a 70,000 word book, I'd be pretty frustrated.
Yeah, I'd be mad if there was only one kiss.
Yeah. If it's like 30,000, that's okay. Because like in my 70,000 word books, I wait till after that sometimes, so after the 30,000 word mark. So yeah, I think it just depends on how long your book is. If it's a long one, I like to have more than one kiss. It's good to have one in the middle at least, and then at the end.
In my 15,000 word story I just wrote, there were 3.
Oh yeah.
So, but they knew each other already, so that helped. So that's Caroline. My daughter's getting ice. Welcome to real life. Somebody talk.
I just lost my train of thought, so I was like, I don't even know what we're talking about now. Oh, this is perfect.
We can't have this dead air time, guys. Okay. So number of kisses in a book. Amy, go.
I'm trying to look stuff up. I would say you would want at least one, and you would want it about 30% to 50% is pushing it. There's been times when we've messaged each other and I've been like, oh my gosh, I'm reading this book and they still haven't kissed yet. So make sure that you are like it. The buildup is good, but the buildup can just get annoying. So make sure that you do good and then you satisfy them and then you push them apart. And then, I mean, if you want to only have 2 kisses, that's fine. So, but yeah, you would want kisses. You would definitely want kisses in there.
Yeah. So I have to say that one of my favorite romances of all time by Georgette Heyer is The Grand Sophie, and there's not a kiss at the end. I think I
found it.
mentioned that
You want
last
me to
week.
read it quick?
Yeah, I think somebody else mentioned it on our group. Is it James Dobson's 12 Steps of Intimacy?
I don't know, but I found
Or
it in my
somebody
my
else's?
notes from like 3 years ago. Are you
Go
ready?
for it.
This is what
Go
she
for it.
said. So take it slow. So first they sum up the person. Second, they look in the eye. Third, they speak to each other. Fourth, hand touches the arm or shoulder. 5, hold hands. 6, arm over the shoulder. 7, arm around the waist. 8, a hug. 9, kiss on the cheek. 10, hand touches the back, like dancing or protecting from danger. 11, hand touches the cheek or head. 12, a kiss. And then 13, the hand touches the neck. And these are more for the and then, you know, you would go farther, but that's pretty much where or with me, you know, pull off the shirt. So, you know, kind of where your end is going to be, and then you don't go past that line. But I think it's interesting that hand on the neck is more intimate than a kiss. But I guess you could kiss, you know.
Well,
Well, you
and
would-
if you think about most kissing scenes, they often describe the hands touching the neck. So you're bringing in the 2 levels at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you mention that if you use the term tongues tangled, some readers throw up in their mouths a little? And so, like, what are some not advisable things to put in a kiss scene, maybe? So I'm going to...
Mouths watered.
I was gonna say, so there may be some authors who are a little notorious for this and who are greatly beloved by their fan base. But yes, but mouths watering do not appeal to me at all.
or if they've eaten like something really stinky, like, you know, onion rings, or like, I hate onions. So if my husband eats onions, I'm like, you're not kissing me the rest of the night because that's gross. But like anything like pizza, if they're like eating pizza, then they go make out, you're like, oh, but they can taste like pizza. Like, And I think telling what they tasted like, unless it's like really important, I think is also kind of weird too. So I try to stay away from tasting. And then I think tongues in general, tongue kissing, French kissing is just odd to write, I would feel. So if you're going to write it, I just read the lady I signed with Sweetheart Books. She actually does really good with her French kiss. And like, I was like, well, I didn't mind that at all. I personally couldn't write it. It ended up being weird and awkward. And people would be like, oh, that was a weird kiss. Ugh, no, I don't like that. So just be careful with tongue. I think you can do it if you do it tastefully and not weird. So there you go. That's my 2 cents.
So, well, and you could also use it for comedic effect, like Amy used with somebody biting the tongue. You know, it can be written well. I've read somewhere I thought it added a lot to the kiss. And then I've read other ones where I was like, well, that wasn't necessary. You know, like I've got an imagination. I know how this works. But, you know, it kind of goes back to another question that we have where is there another ways to take to use the phrase he deepened the kiss? And I find myself using that phrase a lot. It's kind of like a workhorse phrase for me, and probably for a lot of people writing kissing scenes. It's kind of like the he said, she said thing for me. I think it tells the reader what's going on without going into a lot of detail, so I tend to like it. And you could get fancy with it or play with it or reword it a different way, but, you know, everybody knows what that means without you having to use descriptions of tongues. If they are deepening the kiss, you know that they're moving from lips into the mouth with the tongue.
Well, and I think it's a precursor of all the touching that's now going to be amplified more than what was going on before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's taking it from just the emotional sweet kiss into the more passionate realm, and that's why it crosses a lot of boundaries too. It's not just that it's kind of like a gross kind of thing, or can be a gross thing, but I mean, if described by a clumsy writer, it can be a gross thing. Let's put it that way, or it can be a very, very passionate, effective thing to do. It depends on how well it's done, but it's always passionate. It's not ever not passionate, if that makes sense, and so that's why you got to be tricky. You got to be careful with it when you're writing clean and wholesome, because you are definitely moving along towards the more passionate, steamy end once you start introducing the word, tongue, and descriptions of it. Okay. There are a lot of questions about how much and how many are kisses, and a lot of variations. One is depending on how well they know each other, and we haven't talked about that a whole lot specifically. So Amy, I know, likes to play around with, and I think Victorine too, with the fake marriage thing, because they get to kiss sooner because of the plot device. So you got, either one of you want to talk about that a
Well,
little bit?
I would just say the number and how often doesn't matter as much to me as the amount of increase throughout the story to have with the increase in tension, and physical intimacy, and the increase in emotional intimacy. So you want to start out super passionate and have nowhere to go, because your whole story arc is going to be this rise until the climax of the story. And so you want to take it fast, and then you're like, okay, now what have them do to make it go even more? You're already at a really high volume. So to me, as important as, okay, is there a purpose in it? And what place are you in that slow rise? And is this pushing the story forward and making it take another step up? Or are you seeing in because you're like, what else to do, so I'm going to have them kiss? You're muted, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were cutting out.
I was brilliant for a moment, but I was muted, so you'll never know what I said.
I would say, if Victorine, you were kind of choppy there for a second. If you want to learn more about Victorine's fabulous tension she's talking about and building, and not starting at a 10 and starting at a 1, grab her how to write swoon-worthy sweet romance, and she talks a lot about that in more detail, which is fabulous. For me, with my fake marriage kisses, they kiss normally within the first 3 chapters, and what I do is normally it's just to them, they go into thinking it's just going to be the mechanics of a kiss. We're just going to touch, and then it's going to be, that's it and nothing more. And then surprisingly, as they're kissing, they're feeling things, because there has been some sort of attraction. Obviously, they have to be attracted to each other at the beginning. And then that just kind of heightens that attraction. And then they get surprised by the reaction that they have towards kissing, and maybe how right it feels, or wow, this isn't so bad. And then obviously then they're like, wait a minute, no, this is fake. I'm not supposed to think that. And then that's the great pull apart that you have.
Yeah. If you look at pretty much any romance plotting structure, there will be points around the midpoint where the characters have decided to invest in this relationship, or to see what things might develop, or what life would be like, or they're trying to determine, is this the direction I want to go? And they're kind of in that stage when the kisses are important, and that's when they should really be happening. So as you're amping up towards the midpoint, that's where you start to get the almost kiss, and possibly the first kiss right around the midpoint. And then there's this little window of time where they're supposed to have this kind of little happy moment where it goes well for just this little short period of time, and they can be discovering what their relationship could be like, right? And that is right before all the bad things start happening that lead up to the crisis. And so you can have several kisses within that little brief sort of like, I don't know, it's not really a honeymoon period, but it's kind of like this, like, let's try out this relationship phase. And I like to put quite a few kisses in there, and those kisses can change a lot, and those kisses can not have as much of the tension and the angst and the detail that I would put in the first kiss, but they're going to be nice and exciting and possibly pushing the physical relationship further and further, and then that's when everything crashes down on them and it's horrible and can't ever work out, and they're going to be miserable forever and they can't be together. But if you don't ever have that little period to show what it could be like, then the crisis is not as effective. So that's where I like to put all my little like middle kisses. Does that make sense? I'm just naming things. Middle kisses. Okay, so I think that covered most of the questions that we had on our Facebook thing. Did we have some questions on YouTube that we were going to talk about?
We have a couple. We'll go through them pretty quick. So is there things to consider when writing first person to say writing in third person? And that someone was directed that question at you, Judy, and you've done both. I think we've all done first and third. Is there a difference that you need to think of? Why don't you take us off, Judy?
For me, I don't think there's really that big of a difference. It's just the POV is different and you'll use their names instead of I. So, but I don't think I really do anything different. I try to add all the same elements and hit all those points.
I think it depends on how deep you are in third person. If you're really kind of deep into that point of view, then it's going to be really similar to first person. You know, like how much of their internal thoughts you're going to get and how much of their, firsthand experience is going to depend on how deep of a third person you write. If you're pulled back pretty far, then you won't get as many of those, firsthand experience type descriptions within the kiss. And you might get a lot more externals. You might get a lot more like what's going on around them in the room, and you might get more description of what the other character is doing during the kiss rather than just only what the point of view character is experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay, so someone asked, how do you add lust when you've never experienced it yourself? I would say go watch movies.
Well, I was thinking this is like the perfect plot for a story, and now I want to write it. The author who needs to have firsthand experience so she can write her low scenes.
Oh, I love that.
I know, wouldn't that be so fun?
Yeah.
It's fine, you can't have it. Okay, no, I'm just joking.
I
I think it's probably already been
a ton
told.
of them.
Whatever.
Yeah, I would say read a ton of kissing scenes and mimic what you read.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then there's always your pillow. No, I'm just joking. So
No. Yeah, well, there it is.
I was just joking. So I was going to tell you guys as a little trick that if you use the search function within your Kindle book, you can type in the word kiss and it will just pull up any passage that has the word kiss in it. And so it's easy to go through and read just kiss scenes. And so it might be a really fun way to just do like a hardcore study on how to write kisses within a certain category, like clean and wholesome. And so especially if you Kindle Unlimited, just download a bunch of books or pull up the books you already own, search for kiss within each book and read just the kiss scenes. Just go kissing to kissing to kissing. And then you can get a really, you can make notes. You can, compare what's the same, what's different, what did I like, what didn't I like, what worked, and give yourself just sort of like a crash course on kissing that way.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I've always done so.
So Judy, everybody is wondering this wonderful tool you used. What is it that you used it? What was that from? Word?
Yeah, it wasn't a template or anything. It was just I pasted my kissing scene into it, and then I did track changes, and I just made comments of what I just explained what was happening. So it's not a special template. It's just I wrote the kiss, and then
So it's in Word then?
yeah, that was just in Word, but I write in Scrivener. So, but it's not like that was just me commenting on what happened in the kiss scene. So it's nothing special.
And I'm guessing those aren't notes that you use for everyone. If someone wants to know if it's just a summary for that specific scene.
Yeah, it was just a summary of that scene. I don't ever like, oh, now I need to add this thing, and I need to add that. No, I just write the kiss scene, and I don't know. Maybe it's just a habit now, so I don't need that. But
Yeah, you probably are pretty experienced at knowing what needs to happen. So somebody wants to know, is there anything you do differently for a mistletoe kiss as opposed to a regular kiss scene? I guess it would just depend on if you're forcing them by other people to do it or if they're encouraging each other to.
Yeah, I think the fun thing with mistletoe is that they're being forced to kiss by tradition, right? That's what makes it cool, is so I think mistletoe kisses work best for first kisses when they're not necessarily ready for it.
Yep, I agree.
And in my last one, I wrote number 4, you can't misinterpret a mistletoe kiss. I had a lot of fun writing that one because the parents were competitive, and so the two of them got stuck under the mistletoe, and their parents were like, "Kiss them the way their last name. They're like, kiss like a Rogers would kiss," and she's like, "What is that?" Like she's totally like grossed out that her parents were like cheering her on to kiss this guy. So it's really fun. So someone said, so in Sweet Romance, there must be a non-sensual sexual purpose if clothing is removed. So I think you're talking about my shirt, and I think it just kind of, what are you trying to accomplish with the shirt removal? That was kind of the purpose of my shirt removal, was to show that it was a physical representation of the trust he was starting to give back to her and opening up. That's the way I used it. Would I normally have a girl take his shirt off? Probably not. I'd probably keep it on. Maybe if he had a coat, take it off. But other than that, this was kind of a once in a lifetime, not a lifetime. Obviously, I probably read it again. But this is a one very specific purpose. And because I write sweet, and I don't want my readers to get worried that as they keep reading, they're going to get more and more stuff they don't want. I wanted to really drive home that this was the purpose for his shirt to be removed. So, especially since they're staying in her house and there are only two of them there. I can't just have their clothing coming off whenever, they feel like it and be like, and there's nothing else going on here. So, so hold on. Then someone asked the things. Okay. So that's it. I think those are all our questions.
So I had one quick thing I wanted to say that I think is a little bit interesting when you're writing kiss scenes. It's good to use a lot of short sentences and sentence fragments because of two reasons. One of them is pacing. You don't want to have a lot of really drawn out, descriptive, heavy sentences to read. You want to move the reader quickly through the scene. And it also helps to mimic the state of mind that people are in while they're kissing, which is clouded and fuzzy and not thinking clearly. And so we use a lot of disjointed sentence fragment type things while writing your kisses. Anybody else have any final fun little tips they might want to share?
Nope. I just think our longest podcast it's funny. It's about kissing.
We knew it was going to be. Hello.
We love kissing, and we could keep reading our kiss scenes all night long and be like, this is why I love it. It's my favorite.
Yeah, just go read all of our kissing scenes.
Just read our books.
Yeah.
Read our books with lots of kissing.
Well,
So
and
before
read the first books too, because you'll realize how much more we play with where you can reach. Like we told that line, and we're like, okay, I told it. Nobody cared. So what else can I put in there? Because I remember saying, I'm gonna have her wrap her legs around him, and Michelle's like, I don't know, you might get people mad. And then no one said anything, so I was like, okay, now I'll take off his shirt and let's see what people say.
I haven't found myself advising a lot of people to not have legs wrapped around people.
Yeah, and then I read Soraya Wilson's and Casey West in a YA, and I was like, this isn't a YA. I could put it in an adult then. So. That was my justification.
Just has their own line, and just do what you're comfortable with. And if you get too steamy, then you'll just start losing, some of those clean and wholesome readers. So it's just up to you. Every person is different.
And it's tricky because you might not always know. You might not get the bad review or the email. You might just lose readers and you don't even know it. And I know an author who lost a reader and got an email over a word in a book from her newsletter. It wasn't even her book. And somebody was like, okay, well, I'm getting off your newsletter and I'm not reading your books anymore because of a word in the newsletter. So some readers are really, really quick to turn away if there's something they don't like. Okay, we're going to wrap up. So our winner, we had 3,000 people who, it's actually like 3,050 or more people that are members of our Facebook group now. If you aren't one of them, you need to come and join us because we have so much more fun over there in addition to the podcast. But we had a contest there for people who subscribed from our group to our YouTube channel. And so we have a winner for that drawing, and it is Heather May. So Heather May will be contacting you in our Facebook group to let you know that you are the winner of our $25 Amazon gift card. So we are so grateful for all of you people who subscribe to our channel. And if you are watching this podcast and you are not a subscriber, but you like what you heard, then please subscribe. Don't miss out on all of our future podcasts. Like this video if you really liked it, and join our Facebook group. Do we know what we're talking about next week?
So.
Oh, yes, that's our big thing. We are the Writing Gals. Amy, Victory, Jeannie, Michelle, we are the Writing Gals, and this is our podcast. It's our brand. It does not mean that we are exclusively for women. We love women. We support women, but we love men and we support men. We just want to support authors. We want everybody to come and learn and benefit from their community that we've built. So please don't feel like only women can join our group. We want everybody to feel like they are welcome and included. Do we know what we were talking about next week? Because I don't know what the schedule is. It's going to be a surprise.
Yeah.
It's going to be a November 1st one.
This is when Michelle starts strong-arming some of the things that she wants to talk about. So,
okay, go ahead.
Possibly theme or short stories, how to write shorter lengths. I think we should do the shorter length ones.
I think we should do the short length one too.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to do a podcast on how to write shorter length stories. Yay. Awesome. It's been decided. See, this is how well we work. Michelle says, let's do this. And everybody's like,
so easy going.
We'll roll with it. Okay, so thanks for being here with us. Thanks for staying up late. We'll see you next week. Good night.